erùpẹ̀ ni yóò fàgbẹ̀ lójú. Èmi dúpẹ́ mọ́júbà ọba tótó ntótó alára ntótó alára ntótó alára ọba dání wáyé ọba tó mọ̀ mi tó tún mọ̀ mí o lẹ́ẹ̀lára ọba tó fún mi lówó ẹnu mi ayérayé Olódùmarè ọba mi gbangba yípo padà ọba mi gbangba lára òjò wìnìwìnì balẹ̀ gbogbo ilẹ̀ a sì tutù bí èjì òwúrọ̀ mo ṣe bá Olódùmarè tó ráyé lọ́rùn.
In the quiet town of Kire, where traditions live longer than men, there once lived a woman named Adetutu, a wife whose pride brought silence to a palace. This is not just a story, it is a mirror. And you, listener, are welcome. This story happened many years ago in a town called Kire, a place surrounded by thick palm forests, red clay roads, and humming evenings. Kire was one of the satellite towns near Kire, and even though it was not as large as some of the other towns in the region, it was known for its discipline, its chieftaincy customs, and above all, its palace structure. Now, in those days, the Oba of Kire was a respected man named Oba Akinteo Oyakunal II. He ruled with wisdom, and people always said his eyes saw deeper than most. His palace was not very large, but it was firm, well respected, and ran like clockwork. Adetutu was the second wife of one of the high chiefs in the palace, Chief Adegbaro, the Baba Ijoy of the town. Her husband had two wives. The first wife, Mama Risi, was quiet, homely, and never liked to disturb anybody. But Adetutu was not like that. She was tall, beautiful, and the way she carried herself, always with pride. She was the kind of woman that when she passed by, you would notice. Her wrapper was always tight and well tied. Her head tie never leaned to one side. Her gold earrings danced in the sun. She had this way of walking that said, "I know who I am." And truly, she did know who she was. But maybe, just maybe, she forgot where she was. Now, in the palace, things were done in order. There were rules. You didn't just walk into the inner palace without being summoned. You didn't speak while the Oba was talking. You didn't raise your voice in the presence of the Olori, the king's wife. But Adetutu? She always had a way of doing things. Her own way. One afternoon, the palace women were called to prepare for the Aura festival. That year, the town planned to celebrate it in a big way because it marked 50 years of the current king's reign. Women were in charge of weaving decorations, preparing the cloths for the drummers, and cooking special palm oil rice that would be shared for visitors from Modakeki, Elisha, and even Oshogbo. All the palace wives came out early. Some tied their wrappers high and got straight to the firewood. Others began slicing onions and grinding pepper. Even Olori Abike, the youngest of the king's wives, came with her attendants. But Adetutu came late. She came around 11 o'clock, wearing a white lace ero and buba, her skin oiled like fresh yam. She didn't come with any water basin or knife. Instead, she carried a small bag, like she was attending a party. She looked around and said, "Where are they cutting the onions?" One of the women looked up. It was Mummy Williams, an elder from the palace kitchen. She replied quietly, "Sister Adetutu, we dom finished that one since 9. Adetutu raised her brows and hissed quietly. "Nobody waited? You people didn't wait for me. Is that how you do here?" She adjusted her blouse and added, "Anyway, I cannot bend down under this sun. My back has been paining me." She went to sit under the mango tree by the well, brought out a hand fan, and began to fan herself. Some women looked at each other. Nobody said a word, but in their hearts murmurs had started. That was the beginning. Over the next few days, Adetutu continued like that. If they said, "Bring firewood," she would say, "Why should I? Am I a slave?" If they said, Let's wear Ankara for uniform. She would insist on lace. At one point, she told Marries, her co-wife, "See, I didn't marry Chief Adegboro to suffer. I am not like all these women that beg for crumbs. If they don't like me, let them talk." And they did talk, not just the women. Word began to move through the town. Now, one day, the Oba himself summoned Chief Adegboro. The king said,
Baba Joy, I've been hearing complaints about your wife. And not from one person. The Olori mentioned it. Even the market women said. She insulted them when they asked her to join in the preparation for the festival. Tell me, what is happening?
Chief Adegboro was a man of honor. He just immediately bowed and replied, "Kabiesi, I will talk to her, sir." That night, he went home and tried to explain to Adetutu. He said,
You have to humble yourself in this palace. These people are not fools. They're watching. You are not above tradition.
But Adetutu only scoffed. She said, "So it's because I don't kneel down like a goat that people are now jealous. Hey Olowo Arimi, Ali nobody. Let them talk. I am not their mate." She turned her face to the wall. From that moment, things got worse. At the next palace gathering, the king's first daughter, Princess Adekemi, came with her husband. Everybody stood to greet them, including elders. Adetutu remained seated. When someone tapped her shoulder, she said, "Am I a child that I should be standing every 5 minutes?" That day, Olori Abike had had enough. She sent a message to the Aya Oi, the woman leader of Kaya. And it was then that the elders decided to act. They didn't insult her. They didn't embarrass her. Instead, they invited her to serve palm wine during a small ceremony for visiting chiefs. The job is usually for the younger, respectful wives. It's a way of showing humility. Adetutu came with her golden tray, her face painted and proud. She poured for the first chief. She poured for the second. But as she got to the third, her hand slipped. The calabash fell, and the wine spilled on the elder's wrapper. There was silence. She covered her mouth in shock. But what came out of her mouth next ruined everything. She said, "Ah, is it by force to drink palm wine? You people should learn table manners and decorum." There was a loud hiss in the hall. The next morning, a royal guard delivered a message to Adetutu. The Oba himself had summoned her. She entered the palace court in silence. The chiefs were already seated. The Oba sat in his carved throne, his eyes steady. The air was still, no drums, no talking, just a heavy quiet that filled the hall. "Adetutu," the Oba said, his voice calm but firm.
We welcome you into this palace not as a stranger, but as family. We gave you honor, space, and respect. Not once did we ask you to lose yourself.
He looked around the council chamber.
But when correction came, you turned your face away. Even your husband has spoken to you, yet you chose pride over peace, and self over tradition. You insulted the sacred rhythm that binds us as a people.
He paused, letting the silence stretch.
From this day forward, you are no longer permitted within palace gatherings or functions. Remain in your husband's house, if you wish, but until further notice, you have no voice in the matters of palace.
Adetutu opened her mouth to speak, but the words betrayed her. Nothing came out. She rose, slow, and tied her wrapper firmly. With eyes fixed ahead, she walked out of the Oba's court. Her feet made no sound. From that day, something shifted in Kaya. The women of the town began to understand. Fine wrappers and glowing skin do not crown a woman. Humility does. Even Mamarisi, the quiet one, always in the background, was later called to the women's council. And the day she stepped into the palace kitchen, every woman there stood to greet her. As for Adetutu, she remained the wife of a chief. But her presence no longer carried weight. Her name was still spoken, but not with fear, not with envy. And over time, she began to learn that beauty opens doors, but only character keeps them open. Moral of the story: in a town that honors tradition, you can be confident, but never forget where you are and never forget respect. This is the story of Adetutu of Kire.